Welcome back to the Perfect Lap Podcast. I'm Mark Jager. This is Mark Kilgore. He goes by Kilgore. I go by Jager. And today we're going to be talking about Kilgore going to CMP with GridLife. You've been there once. Time to go again. So let's just start off with, you had the off season. What did that really look like to you? What kind of improvements have you made to the car? What are we looking at? How are we going to improve your lap time? And let's first start off, I'll say, what was your lap time at that first event?
So yeah, last year at CMP, my best lap time was a 141.9, which is respectable. But you know, just recently, as part of the off season and as part of preparing for going back to CMP, I was looking at some of my old videos and old data, and just like watching, like I can already see that there's places where I can definitely pick up time. I mean, a lot of improvement. And I think this is probably the case for a lot of times. Even if you go back, even if I didn't change the car, which I've made some pretty big changes, even if I didn't change the car, I would still sort of expect half a second to a second pickup, just from the experience of going back a second time, knowing where I could push a little bit harder. Um, Definitely the kink on the back straight. I know I could pick up, half a second there just because I was being a little bit of a wuss, kind of trying to go through there and get my braking markers, right, my braking points, all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely some more time, even just from me personally. So I'm hoping anywhere from half a second to a second, just an improvement in my own driving from last year. So hoping to get into the 140s, 139s for this upcoming event.
Well, I will say this, a 141.9 is really no slouch at this current venue, right? So 139.3 is the current Street GT record overall. Andy Vogel is the one with the 139, and so yeah, it's gonna be tough to get to a 139, but I do believe, like you said, and I'll ask this: so the simulator work that you did. So going into that first event, how prominent do you think that simulator work was to get you up to speed as fast as possible?
Uh, it was a huge help. I always think, from my experience, if you do like the simulator work, that easily takes, I think, two, maybe even three sessions, maybe even like a day's worth of work off of your times. If
I
you
would
were
say a
to
day.
yeah, if you were to show up without doing that, so depending on, of course, depending on how many sessions you have in a day, but we're talking about GridLife, so that's maybe two or three sessions a day. So yeah, I mean, I think it definitely catapults you into lower times quite quickly. And CMP on Assetto Corsa is okay. It's not great. It's definitely not as good as some of the other tracks. Like when I went to Mid Ohio, I was even much better because the track, uh, the laser scan or whatever you want to call it, right? Just the track itself was much better. So it gives you an even more, it gives you an even better feel. So uh, I'm definitely a huge proponent, and I think most people are now these days, right? Doing simulator work before you show up to a track is definitely a big help.
Yeah, I mean, it's more cost effective in terms of, instead of wasting fuel, tires, and your time, right? You can do
Absolutely.
this in the comfort of your own home. You can do it as many times as you want. I mean, granted, back in the day when I did simulator work, I'm gonna air quotes that one, on my Xbox for Road Atlanta, right? But it allowed me to learn the track, understand what's going to go on, gives me some brake marker references, and just lets you get the flow of the track down, so that when you get there, it's a much smaller learning curve. Now, granted, Assetto Corsa and some of these other programs out there now, much more detailed and can give you a much better, just overall understanding of how you're going to use the track to your advantage. So, great way to get on there and figure that out. So I'm assuming you also did sim work coming into this one too, right?
Yeah, I have. I've jumped on there, not quite as much, but I have jumped on there, and that's mostly been because I've been, as we all do, scrambling to get the car finished. But I have jumped on there a little bit just to kind of, you know, keep the
Refresh.
skills up as well. Yeah, just to kind of keep driving. over the winter, it's always hard to continue to drive and sort of keep that muscle memory. But yeah, I've jumped on there a little bit, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I'll be interested. So let's go from virtual world. Now we're gonna go into real world. We've talked a
Mm-hmm.
little bit about, you did some upgrades. Let's talk about
Yep.
what those upgrades were and what do we actually think. I really want to get down to some nitnoids here about what you actually think from a time perspective. I don't want to say each one, but like each
Yeah.
segment of
Yeah.
upgrades, do you think that they might have an impact on?
So last year, I was running on 295 Bridgestones, and that was on a 10.5 front apex wheel and an 11-inch rear. So a staggered offset. I really wanted to go to a square offset to help with rotating, help with
Hell
tire
yeah.
life. Um, in Street GT, we can run 315s. So 295s was pretty small, especially on a 10.5 and an 11-inch wheel. When I'm competing against Corvettes and Camaros, it can easily fit like 12-inch wheels with 315s. So I said, okay, I've got to do something to get bigger wheels and tires. So Beam World has this GT More kit, which it is not the GT4 suspension, but what they did is they basically said, okay, we're going to use our own components, but we're going to create a very similar setup. So it's a new MCS. It's still an MCS two-way remote setup. So that's what I had previously, but it's a different housing, and then it's new SPL control arms. So that suck, and it's also a new uh, uh, top hat. Yeah, a new top hat to
Like
go into
camber
the
plate.
camber plate. And so that also allows the suspension to get moved in. So that allows me to run 11-inch wheels with 305s. So I'm going to be moving up to 305s. And what I'm actually doing is Beam World says, yeah, you could run 11s. I was looking at some cars over this last year that had that set up and trying to see like, okay, it looks like there's a little more room than you could run with 11s, right? Like if I can fit more room with a wheel, why not do that? And so I said, okay, I actually think I'm going to run 11 and a half, which a half an inch isn't that big of a deal. But at the same time, I felt like I was leaving time on the table. It's pretty well known that, if the more you can support the sidewall of a wheel or of a tire, the better it's going to perform. And so I said, well, if I can gain an extra inch of support, even if it's a quarter of a second, even if it was like half a second, if you look at some of the results, right, the difference between a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth can be half a second or less.
Yep.
So we're talking about time attack, right? There's no reason to leave time on the table. So if I can fit 11 and a half, that's what I'm going to do. Well, no one makes 11 and a half inch wheel off the shelf. And so I started looking around. I'm going to be running the Whoosh bespoke custom wheels. And so we got in touch with them. We worked with them. They make absolutely, great wheels, completely custom offset. So I was able to dictate exactly everything that I needed. They're going to be 19 by 11 and a halfs, which with a very specific offset, which is going to be a plus 30 offset. And so super excited to run those. I'm actually going to be running two sets. And so, in fact, let's hear a little bit more about those bespoke wheels and what exactly they offer.
Here at the Perfect Lab Podcast, we're happy to introduce Whoosh Bespoke Wheels as a sponsor of the show. Whoosh Bespoke was born out of necessity. Their race team struggled to find wheels that offer the perfect fit, strength, durability, and that big old thing, a reasonable price. The people behind Whoosh Bespoke are racers and engineers seeking engineering excellence, and they offer precision forged wheels crafted by racers for racers, with a product lineup that includes a wide range of options from monoblock to modular wheels, including 2 and 3-piece wheel designs. All engineered from the finest materials, although they do primarily use 6061 T6 forged aluminum, but they do offer things as high of quality as a magnesium alloy. So this really can work for any setup you're trying to go for. Customization is at the heart of what they do at Whoosh Bespoke. You can tailor your wheels with custom sizes, offsets, finishes, and even options like custom lettering. Adding two-tones, their colors include both standard and premium finishes, as well as special finishes like brushed, hand polished, and even paint to sample. Every set of wheels produced exceeds the JWL standards and meets the rigorous WCEC quality standards, and they are tested by real people with real cars racing all around the world. And guess what? Me and Kilgore, we're also going to be part of that team. So we're going to be putting these things to the test. We're putting them on our cars. Kilgore's going to be repping out and going through all the time attack season. I'm going to be beating them up at HPDE days and just having a good time with them. So I want you to go take a look at them and make sure you give them a follow on all their socials. It's whooshautomotive.com, Whoosh Automotive on all the socials. Go check them out. And with that, just keep in mind, you can get 5% off with Perfect Lap as the discount code for your own set of Whoosh Bespoke wheels. All right, Kilgore. So we talked about you getting a new set of Whoosh Bespoke wheels. But we didn't say which one did you end up getting?
Good question. So I actually went with two different sets. So the idea sort of there is that I want to have a practice set that probably has more time on the tires, more heat cycles, and then I want to have like a competition set, if that's what you sort of want to refer to it as. Those would be like the Saturday morning, the Sunday morning sessions where you have the best conditions, and then the podium sprint, where I want the freshest rubber that I have. So that's the plan. I'm actually gonna be running the 131 Hockenheims. Let me see if we can get this up on the screen.
Well, I think your plan there too, to have two sets of wheels that you're going to be able to bounce back and forth with, and and from a viewer standpoint, I think it'll be awesome because we'll kind of already know what tire you're on based off of what set of wheels that you'll be utilizing. So these are the Hockenheims?
Yep. So these are the Hockenheims, which maybe I got a little ahead of myself, but I actually ordered these in the gold. So these are the 131 Hockenheim gold wheels. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to be going for gold. When I put these gold wheels on, that means that I'm serious, right? Like, I've got the fresh rubber on. And so that's
I
how
like
you're
that
going to
mindset.
know. That's how you're going to know if you see my car on the live stream and I've got the gold wheels on, that's going to be the good set of tires. And then the second set of tires is the 263 Daytona. So you can see those here. I actually went with just the kind of standard black, just sort of a matte black. So what I currently have now is the black Apex Arc 8s. It's all I kind of like that look. It's on the gray, it's on the mineral gray M4 with some black and some gold and some white graphics. So I think the black kind of looks, it looks pretty racy. So those are going to be the two main ones that I'm going to be running. And we got some other kind of pictures here. So this is something that I think is pretty cool, where you can actually, let's see if we can pull this up. So you can actually get some custom engraving done on these Whoosh Bespoke wheels. So I actually had Perfect Lap engraved into one of the engraved into the one of the
Barrels of the
what you
wheel,
call it? Yeah,
basically.
the
Yeah.
barrel. Yeah, the barrel. So I think that's pretty cool. You can, but you can kind of get something specific to your race team, whatever you want.
I think
So
that's a
yeah,
killer touch, and
yeah,
uh, I think, like I said, I think that's a killer touch. You can add that to your wheel, and literally, you could, if you wanted to, you could have them fill that with some, like a bright yellow or bright red or something if you really wanted it to pop. Or like in this case, right, it's like a subdued look, but it's still, kind of really showcasing, this is what we are, this is what we do. I love it. I love the fact that you can, customize the wheel under all conditions. Obviously, you could literally throw out a whole new design if you really wanted to, but they have designs you can choose from and then options you can choose from. Things like I'm going to say this wrong probably, but it's like the kneeling around the barrel of the wheel to make it so
yep.
that the tire doesn't
The
slip.
knurling. Yeah, yeah,
Knurling, yeah.
yeah. There you go. Yep.
Uh,
And
it's the little stuff.
the nice thing there is that you can either get it painted or unpainted. So if it's unpainted, you get a little bit more of that friction, a little bit stronger grip, so that your tires don't rotate. That was one thing when I first got into, and I don't know, I don't know what your experience was with this, but like when I first got into sort of doing track days and things like that, when I started hearing about that, like your tires will actually slip on your rim, I was like, that just seems crazy. But then you would actually see people like mark, the
Yeah.
tire and the rim, and then after a day, like you could see an inch or so, of tire slippage, which is, I mean, it's a legit real thing. So
Sean
there's
Cagle actually just posted about this
really,
with his Camaro. This isn't like a time attack beast. I mean, this is like a stock Camaro, one LE or whatever the hell they are. And he literally did the line. And like you said, I mean, it was literally like 2 inches of movement of
wow.
tire across that, and that's where products like this that have that capability to kind of limit that tire slippage on the wheel. And that's where really getting a good set of custom or just good set of wheels in general makes a big difference, and that's what Whoosh Bespoke is bringing to the enthusiast market here. So
Absolutely.
pretty
Yeah.
awesome, pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we'll definitely make some posts about it, and hopefully, we'll bring home some hardware with them.
Heck yeah.
Uh, one, those will be really good. So 19 by 11 and a halves, they're forged. You know, even though we don't like to say it, we should all appreciate that wheels, even if they're forged, are not they are consumables, right? They are commodities that we have to go through. So I'm looking forward to having two sets of wheels this year. And again, this year, like it was just all about I'm going all in on Street GT. I really want to take the M4 to pretty much its maximum potential based on the rule set. So I needed to run as much tire as I can. And so fitting the 11 and a half, you could probably fit a 12 in the rear. I think that there's probably enough room, but it's a front limited car in terms of tire sizing. So I wanted to keep that rotatable ability. So 11 and a halfs, which still fit 305s, which I'm going to be running the Vtor P1s. I know you've been running the Vtors, but not the P1s. You've been running the
Enzos.
or I guess the higher treadwear ratings, but you still like them. I'm excited to get them. There's been a lot of, I mean, so far there's been a lot of sort of good
Controversy.
indications, well, controversies, but like good indications that these are pretty quick tires.
Yes.
So I'm excited. So you asked me a question in terms of where do I think some of the gains are going to be coming from? So a slightly revised suspension, but I don't think the suspension is really going to change all that much in terms of a time because it's pretty much what I was running last year, just slightly
Did you
revised.
find, besides the torn boot, did you find anything in the suspension that looked suspicious? So
No,
everything looked good. Just
yeah,
okay.
yeah, everything
Just
was good.
just
Yeah.
bringing it in my head, trying to
Yep,
think
yep.
about it.
Yeah, so everything looked good. All the arms looked fine, no issues. And yeah, I mean, and so actually, and I think we talked about this on the one of our previous episodes where we were talking with Sean from White Line. Now going to the spherical bearings, that was one thing that having to trade out
Oh,
all those bearings again. I checked all the bearings, kind of looked at those, made sure like there weren't any bearings that were just completely loose, right? Or felt that they were broken. I kind of inspected them and did all that stuff, cleaned them. So everything looked good. So I put everything back together there, and excited to kind of get the car back out there because it already feels pretty tight, but now it should feel just even that much more responsive, especially in the rear end. Because I was still running a few rubber bushings in the rear end, but now all of that is completely gone. So it's either poly or spherical bearings in the rear end.
that's going to
All
give you some really good feedback as a
Yeah,
driver. So that's going to be really a big positive effort
yeah,
there. So
yeah. So I am hoping. We'll keep a track of this. I expect even with just going back for my second year, I think that there's at least a second of time in my own driving. Let's
okay, driver
assume,
development. One
yep,
second.
yep, driver development. 1 second. Let's assume that the track conditions are still similar, right? Of course, if the track's in worse condition, then okay. I'm not going to be able to find that same amount of time. But I think that the track should be in the same condition. It's
What's the
supposed to
weather
be
look like?
it's supposed to be weather. It's supposed to be good weather. There's like
Okay.
a 20 or 30% chance of rain on Friday. Saturday and Sunday are clear with like highs in the low 70s. So it's going to be pretty
So
good time
pretty
attack
solid.
weather. Yeah,
Okay.
pretty good turbo weather. I'm all about the turbo weather. So I think a second of driver development, and then going from a 295 Bridgestone to a 305 Vtor P1 on the Whoosh bespoke wheels. I think that that's probably, I'm hoping, anywhere from a half a second to a second worth of time.
Okay.
Based on the Grassroots Motorsports tire review that Andy Hollis did, um, the Vtors were the clear winners, and I think that they were about half a second to 3/4 of a second faster in the same size, right? So
Oh,
size for size, the Vtor was about 3/4 of a second faster than the Bridgestones. Um, we'll double check that. So I think upsizing to the 305s on the larger wheels, half a second to a second. Let's call it a second. Let's be
okay.
generous and let's call it a second. All right. So we're at already 2 seconds gained. Now that gets us to the biggest change that I've done, which is the car has now been tuned for the good old corn fuel E85.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're talking
Um,
power, baby.
big power, big power. Street GT rules require me to run stock turbos, and that is stock housing, stock impellers. Do you call them impellers? Propellers? I'm not sure.
Propellers, impellers,
I don't know. You know, stock
inducer.
internals. Yeah, stock internals. Right. You can't get one where you like get a stock housing and then you bore it out and you go to a bigger, impeller or whatever. Anything like that. So, uh, stock turbos, stock fueling. I could have upgraded the low pressure and the high pressure fuel pumps, but I didn't based on talking with the tuner. Shout out to Chris at Motorsport and the guys at Kennedy Performance here in Nashville. They did a fantastic job getting all of this together. The only thing I had to upgrade was the injectors, higher injectors for a little more flow rate for the E85. So we put the car on the dyno this past week and ran it as is in the configuration that I was running last year. So that was a MHD Stage 2 tune. For Street GT rules, like I said, stock turbos, and I'm only limited to 20% boost over stock. So the stock boost in a BMW CS, which is eligible for the class, is 21 pounds. So that means I can run 25 pounds. We're doing a lot of math on this time attack podcast. So
Yeah.
20% over 20% of 21 pounds of boost is 25 pounds. So that was my target. So I was running about 24 pounds on that stage 2 tune on 93 pump gas, and on the dyno hit 505 horsepower and about 515 foot-pounds of torque. Stock, the car runs 420, so this was 505 wheel horsepower. So putting in the E85, which actually was about, it was pump E85, which was actually about E60. I was blown away, dude. I was blown away. I was hoping we might. I was like 590. Like if I was at 590, I mean, if I hit 600, like that would just be crazy. So I go up. So Connor at Kennedy Performance and Chris was remote tuning. Chris from Motive Motorsport was remote tuning the car, and I went up there for the last few pulls that they were doing, and the car ended up making 625 horsepower.
That's
So that's a
pretty fucking solid.
yeah. So that's like over an additional 100 horsepower that I had from last year. But this is the crazy thing, 700 foot-pounds of torque.
That's going to be useful. As long as
Yes.
you got the grip from tires and wheels, that's going to be
Yes.
useful.
Yes. So, again, I mean, I know we're giving out round numbers, but right now over 100 horsepower and nearly 200, we'll call it like 190 foot-pounds of additional torque. Assuming I can get all that to the ground, which I think I can. Um, another second worth of time. I mean, there's two and a half decent straightaways at CMP, especially the long back straight. So, I mean, I think, right, if I'm gaining half a second of time at each one of those straightaways, which I think I can, we're talking about another second. I think that I am shooting for anywhere from about 2.5 to maybe 3 seconds. If I really put everything together, maybe 3 seconds. But I think 2.5. Larger tires, way more horsepower, and having now this will be my second time going there. I think 2.5 seconds is very reasonable, which that will put me very close in Andy Vocal's overall Street GT record. And we're
Well, I
all
think
about records on this show, Jaeger. We're all about
well,
records.
I was going to say, so here's in taking information that you've given, I absolutely agree with you that, in a perfect world, hopefully we get a 3 second drop. This is going to be my worry for you. I will say that in this context.
Bring me back to reality, Jaeger.
The worry for you is this. I think that you will exceed your 3 second. I think you'll end up at
Oh,
like a
God.
3.2. But the only issue that I see is I'm looking at Street GT, okay? 2023, Brandon Hodge ran a
Yep.
140.5. Now Vocal went and did a 139.3, so he bested that record by 1.2 seconds.
Yep.
So if you come in and you drop 3, let's just say, so you end up at like a 138.9, the worry that I have is, what does it look like for competition? Because you might end up being in a situation where you break the previous year's record, and now you're worried about who else showed up. And if Andy Vocal shows up, and if he can, and what modifications he has, we might be looking at a situation where he might be able to best his record and end up into a 138.5 or something like that.
Yep.
So there's always those options, but obviously I'm hopeful for you. I'm hopeful that you'll be able to get there, get the time in, and exceed our expectations. And I
You're
think
right.
I think there's ability for that. Like you said, the straightaways at CMP give high relevance to the power upgrade. The power upgrade is going to be huge. Now, I will ask this simple question, and a lot of our viewers might be very curious on this matter. So for you, how many times have you driven this new setup out of track?
Exactly.
So that's going to be
the silence was the answer.
that's probably going to
Yes.
be the biggest hardship going into this.
Oh, yeah.
Is because you've driven this car at this 505 horsepower level for a couple years now, right?
Yep.
So it is going to be quite a substantial change, and I'll be interested to see what does that look. Is it on the graph? Did it look more progressive? Did it look like it was peaky? Did you see a lot of it just in the top end, or like what did you gain down low? Because that's going to hold a lot of relevance to that foot pedal and how you're able to utilize. So again, I'm very hopeful. I actually think I'm putting my spot down now, as I think you're going to be looking at like a 138.7 is I'm going to
Woo-hoo.
write this down
All
magically as
right.
well.
All right.
So Jaeger's going with a 138.7. That's what I'm putting down. What's your guess?
Oh, man. I'm gonna go with a 38.9.
Okay.
3 seconds. A 38.9. That's what I'm gonna go with. And you know what, Jaeger? I I don't want to make you a liar. So my God, I'm gonna push for that 38.7 as best I can. I to your point, I there and we'll talk about maybe some of the competition that I think is going to show up, which actually I think benefits me this year. But I'm definitely kind of interested to see how the car drives. I have at least been able to drive it a little bit on the street, but haven't really been able to get on it very well, obviously. But the so Chris at Motive, very well known in the at least in the BMW tuning scene, but I mean he appreciates and he understood this is a track car. Here are the parameters that we're limited to, and so he said, I'm going to give you something that's nice and linear, that's gonna have power, but that isn't going to be peaky, like you said, right? You don't want this boost just all of a sudden coming in. Um, the other kind of nice thing about MHD, the tuning system that I use, is that you can actually limit power by gear. And so
Oh,
like
good.
for like a third, right, if I there may be a couple turns where I'm in third gear, so I could maybe pull that back a little bit if I feel like I'm getting,
Hmm.
maybe too much wheel spin, etc. But it is definitely going to be a bit of a big change, and obviously I should have more speed down the straights. So that means I'm really going to have to refigure out where my brake markers are. I know what they were last year, but I'm going to have to kind of figure that out, especially with the new tires. There's definitely a lot of changes. So that's going to be a big ask to work through all that. So let me throw this in there. Friday, maybe a little bit of sketchy conditions. There's like a 30% chance of rain Friday. So um, GridLife's now gone for track battle. They've now gone to a new setup, which is basically traditional time attack with a podium sprint at the very end. So Friday, and this is generally how it's going to be at all of the events. Friday, there's going to be 3 sessions. First session out counts, right? So these are going to be the qualifying sessions to get into the podium sprint. There's not going to be any practice, anything like that. First session out on Friday, it is a time session.
Oof.
So 3 sessions on Friday, 3 sessions on Saturday, then a morning session on Sunday, and then the podium sprint will be at the very end. So plenty of sessions to get a handle on the car, but if Friday isn't looking very good, and even if it rains a little bit, right, and it's a damp track, it's just not the same. So
Yes.
we'll have to see how the weather plays out on Friday. So that could limit the amount of sessions that I have, but I definitely agree. It's gonna be a lot of changes. I will at least say this. Chris also made me a low boost map.
Which should be good for adverse weather conditions.
Yep. So that one runs, I think, about 580 horsepower, 590. So, it's at least a little bit better. And so we'll probably maybe start off on that
Hmm.
boost map, kind of see how the car, make sure everything's working well with the car, and then maybe Saturday and Sunday we'll turn it up. But
Are you starting with two brand new sets of P1s?
yes, yeah,
So, I mean, it's pro and con, obviously, because in a weird, in the perfect world, you would use a set of used to get that
sure.
first couple sessions in, but obviously to start the year, you got new, so you're gonna start new. So,
Yeah, and actually this may even work out. Well, this there may be even more challenges, which is I need to heat cycle the tires.
oh
I have
yeah,
not been able to do that. So my plan was the first 2 sessions, uh,
alternate and heat cycle both.
alternate and heat cycle both, which is, the um, the suggestion is to, you go out on track, you sort of slowly ramp up. You run like a 6/10, 7/10 lap, then another 7/10 lap, then an 8/10 lap, then maybe like a 9/10 lap. Slowly work those tires up to temperature. Ultimately pushing pretty hard at the end to really make sure that you get them up to operating temperature. Then you pull off, you let them sit, right? And so preferably sit for 24 hours. But for the first set, I was going to run the first set run the second set, let that second set sit overnight, and then put the first set back on. If it's damp, if it's raining, we'll have to see how that works out. So
Yeah, that's going to play a big part in it.
yeah, I may have to figure out what I'm going to do there. But anyway, that was my off season. Big suspension, tires, wheels. I'm super excited about the power. And then otherwise, I did a couple other small things, like in terms of I switched out my seat. So I went from an OMP seat that weighed about 18 pounds, 17, 18 pounds. Went to a Sparco, one of the new Sparco Ultra Carbon seats.
Ooh, those are
Super
so.
comfortable. Yeah,
Are they?
super comfortable. I'm kind of interested to see how it actually is on track. So for me, this is just personal preference. I like high side bolsters by my hips and legs to keep me from moving around a lot on my lower portion. And then these seats have no shoulder bolsters, right? It kind of
Okay.
cuts in after your torso. It sort of cuts in. So I'm sort of interested to see how that works with moving
Yeah.
around at the top portion. Um, I've talked with a couple guys. I talked with Gabe Zamora, who drove a Porsche GT3 RS, I think it is. He had a tillet seat, which I
Yeah.
first tried the tillet seat, which was super nice. I asked him about that, and he actually said with the harness, you don't really move around all that much in the top part of your shoulders and the top part of your torso just from the harness. And then it's SCCA Time Trial Nationals. I think it was Jeremy Bailey who had a FRS. He had a Sparco seat. And so I said, hey, I was like, I know this is going to be sort of weird, but do you mind if I like try your seat out? Like, can I sit in your seat? And he was like, yeah, dude, absolutely. So I sat in it. It was also very comfortable. And he sort of said the same thing. He said he didn't really feel that he was losing anything from having the shoulder bolsters.
Okay.
So definitely interested to see how that plays out. I think that seat weighs in at 9 pounds. So I lost about 9 pounds, which okay, that's at least a little bit. But then I also traded out my stock battery, which I think weighed something like 35 or 40 pounds to a oh gosh, now I can't remember what the name of
Is
it
it
is.
anti-gravity or is it
Anti-gravity, not a Braille battery. Yeah, anti-gravity battery, which is one of the smaller units, like their motorsport power sport units, which I think weighs like 8 pounds,
nothing?
7 or 8 pounds.
It
Yeah,
weighs nothing.
yeah, basically. So I've lost maybe about 20, 25 pounds, maybe 30 pounds, in the car, which is, I mean, it's not much. Otherwise, there's really not much else to lose in the car unless you start getting crazy, like thinning out the wiring harness, things like that, right?
That's
Um,
not very fun to do on these
yeah,
cars.
yeah. So anyway, I'm excited. One last thing that we'll talk about with this, and then we'll move on to what you've got going on, which is, well, what does the competition look like?
Yep.
There are, we love GridLife. They run great events. They really do. I mean, they do a lot of stuff at a single event, right? They're putting on a full music concert. They've got, drifting, they've got GLTC races, wheel to wheel races, they've got, a ton of stuff going
You
on.
sound like you're about to break up.
No. So, no, no, no. So, like, I can appreciate all the work that they do. But one thing that sort of drives me crazy is that they never put out driver lists, like entry lists, until maybe the week before the event. And it's always sort of annoying because I'm like, well, who's showing up?
You want to know who you're going
Yeah,
against.
I don't know, right? And I think, and we could talk about this in a second, but like, I think it, not that it really affects them because all their events sell out within like 5 minutes anyway. But I think for some
Yeah.
organizations, I could see where, like, if I don't even know who's showing up, like everybody sort of waits till the last minute because they're like, do I even want to spend all this time and money and energy going to an event where I don't end up actually having anybody to race, right? Like I want to know that there's going to be people in my class that I can race against.
Yep.
So I do wish that they would put that out earlier just so that you could see like who's in my class and is it worth my time and energy and effort to actually go. All that to be said, we are recording this just a few days, less than a week until the event starts, and I don't know who's showing up. The only reason I do know people who are showing up is because I've talked to them or I've seen them make posts on like Facebook. So there's 3 people that I know that are showing up. Connor Gallagher in his Nissan GTR, who he is the current all-wheel drive record holder. At what like I think he ran like a 40.5. Let's pull those records back up and just double check that. Connor
Last year,
Gallagher, a
Connor ran a
41.6.
142.0 last year.
Yeah, so this is again part of the confusion. If you look at the results from
Oh,
GridLife, that was his podium sprint time.
got you.
His fastest time was a 41.6. So he was 3/10 faster than me last year. But he does know CMP. That's a close track for him. So he has multiple times there racing. Um, so he's going to be there. Ben, I can never say his name, but I'm gonna say Ben Bolthus. Boltus.
Ben
He's in a
Boltus.
Supra. Yep, he's in a Supra. He's done some upgrades to that car, but we were usually around the same times. Depending on the track, I might be in front, he might be in front.
I mean, you guys were
Um,
super close in that podium sprint. You were a
uh,
thousandth.
so we did not make the podium sprint last year. We were
Or
sixth and
sorry.
seventh. Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
In
I
the
mean,
in the
if you,
overall results.
yeah. If you look at, I mean, so Connor Gallagher last year was a 41.6. He was what, a 41.8 or a 41.9, and I was a 41.9. So we were all within 3/10 of each other vying for that last spot in the podium sprint. So super tight, which is fun.
Yeah, even Ryan Matthews was at he ended it in a 141.6 as well.
Yeah. So, but I know Ben's made a few upgrades, but I don't think he's made as many upgrades as I have. I don't think he's gone like E85, and I don't think he's going to be running as large tires as I am. So I'm expecting, all due respect to Ben, like Ben, I think that I may be able to pull away from him, separate myself from him a little bit this year. The wild card that's going to be there, at least that I know that is showing up, is Austin Hurdle. So he is going to be showing up in a C8, which is what Andy Vocal was running last year, and that is what he set the record in.
Uh,
The question is, Austin has, I think he's got MCS suspension. I think he's going to be running Bridgestones. I think in like a 275, 305, maybe 275 front, 305 rear, something like that. And then, he's got like a roll bar, and a seat. And that's really about it. It's pretty basic. I don't think he's done any power mods. I don't think it is nearly as modified. Not that Andy Vocal's C8 was highly modified last year, but I don't think it's as modified. And I'll be honest, Austin has done a bunch of GLTC racing, but I'm just not sure. I don't really know exactly what his, what is he going to look like when he shows up in that C8. So I don't know. Bit of a wild card, but we'll see. I am cautiously optimistic. We'll see who else shows up. But I'm I absolutely am expecting to be in the podium sprint. I'm going to be disappointed if I'm not bringing home, let me see, bringing home another trophy. I need another trophy. I need to start this season off right. So
well,
what?
I think you definitely made strides, upgrades, right? You've done what you needed to do like you've been competing in this class for 2 years now. You've been working your way up. You've been seeing what needs to be done. You recognize some power and some suspension upgrades, some tire upgrades. You kind of were able to look at the competition and go, okay, this is what they're doing. I need to kind of follow suit with this to get in line. I mean, when you start looking at a track like this and the competition as a whole, I mean, competition was freaking crazy last year. Looks like, didn't
Yeah.
realize it till I brought this up right now. I mean, I'm literally looking at something where it says essentially 141 till eighth place, which
Yeah.
is
It's tight. It's real
wild,
tight.
right? That
Yeah.
is some really, really close racing, which again, adding 100 horsepower, adding wider tires, and just overall knowledge of the track and having a better understanding. I mean, that's going to be what's going to make the difference there.
Yeah.
So again, you know, going back to it, I think it's going to always come back to everybody always usually makes strides. It's a matter of who can take each of those strides and also make it so that the car can still produce in terms of not inducing failures, obviously,
Yep.
and doing things like you did, going through the whole suspension and just replacing things, replacing bushings, taking out failure points. That's what really makes the difference and makes things, that much better.
Yep.
So
Yep. So I'm excited. I'll be honest, and I don't really know if I've seen anything. I don't know what the live stream situation is going to be. They are going to be live streaming, but I don't really know if they're going to be doing like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if they're streaming every session. I don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't really heard that information. So that would be good for the for GridLife to maybe put out at some point. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. Kicking the season off there at CMP, and I we'll kind of see how it all ends up over the year. We've got CMP. Then I'm going to be doing Road Atlanta in May, Mid Ohio in June, Road America in July, and then maybe Lime Rock in August, and then maybe Laguna in September. I really want to go back to Laguna. I think the car would be killer there as well. Because obviously, you know, it's pretty interesting, and I'm not trying to talk myself up, but at the same time, if I kind of look at my projection all through last year, CMP was really close to getting into the podium sprint, but ended up seventh, and I was a little disappointed, even though I ran a pretty good time. Like, again, it was my first year really fully running with GridLife, but seventh at CMP. And then I think the next event was like Gingerman, and I ended up sixth at Gingerman, just outside of the podium sprint again, like by a couple tenths. Get to Mid Ohio. Mid Ohio was not a podium sprint weekend, but I actually ended up fifth and was actually within like a couple seconds of the guys at the front. So just continually made improvements, got more comfortable with the car. And then, of course, go to Laguna. Now, granted, Andy was at Laguna, but a lot of the guys who normally ran GridLife weren't there. But still, I had to put down a good lap and ended up third, right? So a continual progression of moving up
the
the
ladder
podium
there.
spot,
Yeah.
the finishing. So I mean, if I kind of try and look at that and say, okay, I did well. I was continuously showing improvement, ultimately ending up, on the podium at Laguna. I've made a lot of changes that I think are really going to improve the car. I think that I should be able to continue that trend now moving forward into this next year. Let's start off with the podium and let's kind of see where I can go. Andy Vocal is not running in the class this year. I think Ito Waxman, who was in a C6 Corvette, a C6 Z06, it's sort of iffy on whether or not how much he's going to be able to run. He and his wife are having a baby, so that kind of takes some precedent
Mm-hmm.
in terms of finances and time. And then Christian Aranja, who ended up second last year at CMP, he has moved into GLTC. Kevin Horn, who was in a Camaro last year, him and I were sort of battling. Sometimes I'd be faster, sometimes he would be faster, depending on the track. He's moved to Club TR. So there's like four guys who were perennial podium sprint finishers who aren't in the class anymore. So I hate it because I really kind of want to see where my car would have stacked up with them. But I also see this. This is the great thing about Time Attack. There is always that. There's always that record to chase, and
Yeah.
so even if the guys aren't there, I can still always chase that record, and I want to see how close I can get to those records.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it right. Like that's exactly what makes Time Attack one of the greatest sports out there is you get to compete against first yourself. You're always trying to best your previous best. Then you get to have the competition based aspect where now you're competing against other competitors and trying to see where you stack up against other people and their cars. And then on top of all of that, now you get to look at it from a competition base of the records overall in that category, which always gives you something to chase. That's one of the reasons why we love Time Attack, is there's always something to chase. There's always something to better and improve yourself, improve your thing. Like I can go out and I can go out in the very first session of the day and I can break my personal best. I can break the class record for my orientation of drive, and I could beat the overall record. And you know what? I can go out in the second session, and you know what? Now I have a new goalpost in front of me to say, now I need to beat that, right?
Yep.
There's always going to be something to beat. So there's never a time where you can just rest on your laurels and say, well, I've done everything, because you haven't. There's always something else. So
Exactly.
that's one of the best parts of Time Attack, guys.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We're going to be posting on Instagram, so you guys can definitely check us out there. Keep up with what's going on over the weekend. If you're at CMP and you want to know what's going on at Super Lap Battle, we'll keep you updated, or vice versa. So hit us up on Instagram. We also have a website. You guys can check that out. If you want to email the show, if you want to email us or get in touch with us, obviously you can, DM us on Instagram or anything like that. You can also email the show at maximumattack@perfeclappodcast.com. You can obviously catch the show on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, as well as on YouTube. So we try and post on every other Thursday. We've gotten a little bit off on that schedule currently. We're sorry about that, but that's just due to us trying to get everything done for these events. So we're putting this episode out just a little late, but every other Thursday we should be putting out episodes. So always be looking for that. And then, of course, we put content out on Instagram whenever we get ready to post up those episodes. So as always, thanks for listening. All you time attackers out there, go fast, take chances. We'll see you in the next one.